2023. I ask that you rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Beck, would you please call roll?
Demore,
Present.
Shields,
Here.
Wagner,
Here.
Walker, present, Murphy.
Present, we have a quorum. Next is a presentation. We're going to hear a new public safety staff by our director, Rocky Connor. Come on down, Rocky. Oh, and you have to push the button too. You don't have to give your name and address.
Very good, thank you. I'm going to be very brief for all who want to still maybe enjoy some of this day today. First off is an introduction of our code enforcement officer that I think everyone has been looking forward to, including myself and staff. I'd like to introduce you to Antonio Belmonte, Tony Belmonte. Tony is, he's been with the city for since 2016, covering our Bay Harbor station. He's been on Emmett County EMS since 2017, and he is still currently on Resort Bear Creek since 2012. He is a inspector, and he is also familiar with building codes. Tony has numerous hours of volunteering between our department, Bear Creek, that I'm aware of. He also has certifications, is a certified EMT, firefighter 1 and 2, NFPA certified fire inspector, as well as NFPA plan examiner. Tony is slated to start as a code enforcement officer on May 22nd. He is a resident of the city, and I hear he makes one heck of a carbonara. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tony Belmonte, are you going to?
Congratulations, and we're looking forward to working with you, Tony.
Next
We'll
is,
introduce his wife to us.
yes, this is Jamie Belmonte.
Thank you guys for coming.
She keeps him on a leash. Next is our newest promoted lieutenant, Matthew Mikulski. Matthew is from Charlevoix. He graduated from Lake Superior State with his bachelor's degree in criminal justice. He's been with Petoskey Public Safety since 2004. He's a firefighter 1 and 2 and an EMT. He's also one of our field training officers since 2013. He was one of our detectives from 2019 to 2022, and he's received 23 recognitions for outstanding performance. Matt is on the board of directors for Charlotte Area Trout Tournament Committee, which recently supplied 350 bluegill to the end of the fishing pond here at Bayfront Drive. Matt is also a volunteer coach for U19, U11 youth soccer. And I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Lieutenant Matthew Mikulski.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Congratulations, Matt. And you're not done yet.
Okay, here we go.
Here,
Yes, sir.
there's another young lady here that came with him, and she needs to be introduced. I told her she had only to speak 5 or 10 minutes. I think it's important to meet family too.
Do you want to say?
No.
Why?
My daughter had
Hannah.
practice.
There's Etta and Juno, the two that keep him in line right now. And
Okay.
so he's busy. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Public Safety Director Carr. Okay, now, you notice how quick that was? And us. Bye. Good. Good. Next, we're gonna hear a presentation from Representative Dennis Gartland and Nagath, Traverse City, concerning the financial statements report of the independent certified public accountants of the annual audit of the city's financial year end January 31, 2022.
Yes.
Come on down.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm Trina Oakes. I'm an audit partner with, is this on? Yeah, okay. Dennis Gartland and Nirga. And we conducted the audit for December 31st, 2022. And I'm here tonight to go over what the audit results were and a very high level of the financial results. So you should have received the audited financial statements, which are fairly long, and an audit related communication letter. We'll start out in the audited financial statements. You turn to the first page right after the index. It says independent auditors report. And this starts out with the whole point of the audit, which is for us to issue an opinion on the audited financial statements. And we did issue an unqualified or unmodified, basically a clean opinion on the financial statements, which means that we found that everything was presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So these financial statements include all the funds of the city of Petoskey, as well as their component units, which includes the Tifa district, the library, and downtown management parking. In the center of the page there, under accounting changes, there was a new standard that had to be implemented by the city this year. It's GASB, Governmental Accounting Standards Board 87, related to leases. And that requires that the city record directly on the balance sheet, leases receivable and leases payable. So we'll go over that in just a few moments. A couple of pages back on page 5 of the financial statements. This is also letting you know that these financial statements include supplementary information. So the management discussion and analysis, the pension, 10-year trend schedules, budgetary comparison schedules, and the combining financial statements in the back. And so we did perform procedures on all of that information. So from here, we'll turn to page 6, which is the management's discussion and analysis. And those of you who haven't sat for this presentation before, I encourage you just to kind of skim through the management discussion and analysis. It's prepared by management. It's a nice summary of the financial results without actually reading the entire book. So in the financial highlight position there, the net position increased by $1.1 million or 1% in 2022. Total revenues and transfers were $30.8 million and total expenses were $29.6 million. The general fund had an increase of $200,961, and that left total fund balance at the end of the year of $5.7 million. So under the project highlights there, the city is just giving some highlights of what happened during the year. So there was basically some street construction going on in 2022, as well as electrical system upgrades. Going back a couple of pages, back to page 8, there's a table of the net position. And we're going to focus on the far right column, the total primary government. So the total assets were $101 million. About $63.3 million is in capital assets. So buildings, equipment, furniture, fixtures, additions, road improvements. And then the remainder, $37.8 million, is other current assets. There's some deferred outflows of resources of $4 million, which is related to the pension liability. It's part of that calculation. The total liabilities were $16.8 million. Most of those, or about $14 million, are non-current, meaning they're due in over a year from the end of the year. $2.9 million is current. Then there's some deferred inflows of resources of $678,000, and that is primarily related to the lease standard that was implemented. So that's money that will be coming in the future. And so net position was $87.6 million. Of that, $54.8 million is those capital assets less related debt on those. Restricted was $7.1 million, and then unrestricted was $25.6 million. From there, we're going to go back one more page to page 9. This is the total revenues and expense. And again, we'll focus on the primary government on the right here. So total program revenues or charges for services, items where you charge a fee were 21.9 million. General revenues were 5.6 million, and that's primarily the property taxes that come in. So overall total revenues were 27.6 million in 2022 versus 27.9 million in 2021. So that's down about 1%. Total expenses were 27.1 million versus 24.9 million in 2021. So those are up about 9%. I did just kind of make some highlights here. The biggest categories are the water and sewer and electric, of course, and then public safety, public works, and recreation and culture, which would include those improvements that the city has done for the year. So overall, there was a net increase in that position of $759,000. From here, I'm going to just point out a couple of footnotes. So we're going to go all the way back to note B, which is on page 36. This is related to the lease standard that was implemented. So this gives you details about it. Essentially, there were 4 tower leases that generate lease revenues for the city that were required to be recorded under this standard. So these are leases that are in excess of 1 year. We have to calculate out those future payments using the city's incremental borrowing rate. So this resulted in the general fund recording a lease receivable and deferred inflow of $213,000, and water and sewer recording the same for $402,000. So this standard will amortize those lease receivables as you receive them. A portion will go against the receivable. A portion is now considered interest. And then that deferred inflow of resources also gets amortized over time. On the bottom of the page, there were a couple of line items that were over budget. However, the general fund was under budget in total for the year. So accounting standards require that we disclose those over budget departments in the financial statements. And then we're going to go back quite a bit farther, back to page 60, which is the budgetary comparison schedule for the general fund. So this is, I just mentioned that they were within budget. So the city budgeted $6.9 million in revenue and came in at 6.937. So you actually had a positive variance of 77,000. Expenditures were budgeted at 9.1 million. Came in at 8.9, and so you were under budget by 160 in expenses. So overall for the year, the city had budgeted a net decrease in fund balance of 36,800 and came in positive to the budget or net income for the year of 200,961. So you can see here at the bottom of the page that you were within the budgeted totals for the fund. The ending fund balance for the general fund is 5.713 million. That's approximately 7.5 months of expenses. So as a benchmark, we always recommend that you try to have at least 3 months of expenses in your fund balance to cover cash flow when you're waiting for receivables to come in and you have to pay payables. So that's a very healthy fund balance to have. And then I did want to point out on page 64, the MERS schedule. The city in 2022 did contribute an additional $1 million over in excess of the required contribution of $804,000 for the pension plan. However, on the bottom of the page there, you'll see that MERS changed the assumption on the interest rate return. So they reduced it, and that unfortunately increased the liability to the city. So even with that additional contribution, you are 81% funded at the end of the year.
Really?
What page is that, MERS?
Page 64.
And so we paid 1.8 million as opposed to the 800,000 that we're required to pay?
Correct.
And we still went backwards.
Mm-hmm. The liability is still increased. So it's an estimate that's recalculated each year.
I always thought that we went for 1 million and that we didn't vary from that. So to hear that it was actually funded at 1.8 million is really interesting.
That has historical. Mm-hmm.
Oh, so it's in addition to an 800,000,
Whatever their bill was.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
If you look at that page, it has the 10-year historical information there. So 1, 2, 3, 6 years in a row, the city has contributed an additional million over and above
That's over and above the.
what they said you had to pay. Mhm. So the state, you fill out an annual pension report. The state's always interested to know that you paid your annual required contribution, and you will include on that report that you've contributed an additional $1 million.
But we're only at 81, weren't we at?
You were higher.
93.
Yeah, it's.
Is it due to the actuaries and statistical things showing how long people live?
It's all of that. So back on page 62, at the bottom of the page, 81% is highlighted up here. You can see you were 97% funded in 2021. So this is recalculated each year based on information that MERS provides, and they get a new actuarial estimate each year, and then it's calculated and recorded in the city's financial statements.
So had we not put $1 million extra into that, we would be
A lot worse.
in the mid 70s or something like that, correct?
Yes. Yes. There's another very, we want to talk pension, we could talk pension all night, but on page 54, if you go back a little, the standard also requires that MERS provide you with an estimate of the discounting. So if the discounting rate were to go down by 1% or up by 1%, how it would affect your liability. So it's on that first table at the top of the page. So the city's current net pension liability is $6.3 million. If there was a 1% decrease, it would go up to $10.2 million. And if there was a 1% increase, it would go down to $3.048 million.
What page is that?
Page 54.
So right now we're at 6.3
Correct.
million owed
Tumors.
behind.
Mhm. So just that, little change in the interest rates and the assumptions increased your liability. So
Jeez.
0.35% decrease in the interest rate ran in, flowed through the calculation this year.
So how did that, how would that affect our budgeting for next year and planning accordingly? It's always like a kind of a crapshoot, right? Like you really never know what's gonna happen with the interest rates and their calculations. Their mystery sauce.
So for budgeting, they tell you your annual required contribution. It's been running around 800,000. So it's up to the city. I think for budgeting, you'd probably be very similar.
But our mayor takes such pride in like us, like paying on our. We love it, so it's like, okay.
You're absolutely doing better than a lot of municipalities.
Some other numbers. You do a lot of cities.
Yes.
Private city, where are they at?
I don't know. That was on 16% funded range,
Yeah.
so quite a bit lower.
I can share, I've got a long list of where communities are, because the frustrating thing, and we've made this point before, is communities that have sat on their hands and not addressed their liabilities are going to get funding, which is very frustrating for us because city council has been proactive to really attack our unfunded liability. And we are right now on the outside looking in for significant state dollars. So.
Are you saying we should?
No, I'm not saying we can sit on our hands and don't do anything. That's not what I'm saying. It's just, I'm expressing.
I was actually going to bring that up. So that was recent legislation.
Yeah.
Is it final?
And we've, obviously council passed a resolution for us to send forward as many communities that are banding together and are going to our legislature to potentially get that money back in the budget for those communities that are beyond above 60% funded, because that was removed out of the state's budget, unfortunately. So thank you.
I read somewhere, is it Grand Traverse County or the Traverse City itself that's over there, but they're at 50 million.
Yeah, it's high.
50 million
Ranchers,
in the hole.
Oh, yeah. I know.
That's not,
They're famous.
that's to catch up, just to be
Mhm.
Miss Laura.
Mr. Horn, did we hear anything back from Senator Demus or Representative Frisky on our submission?
I have not heard anything back from either one.
Okay.
We do have, in this current budget year, we did reduce that, if you remember, when we were going through the budget cycle. So we don't have the full $1 million. We ended up reducing that down to 660 or 600,000. 600,000. Right in that range.
I thought it was 600, yeah.
So that's obviously above and beyond still, but not quite as where we were in the past, 5-6 years.
Wow.
So there's also the separate audit related communication letter, which is just stapled in the front. So these are items we're required to communicate to those charged with governance at the completion of our audits. The first page talks about internal controls, which is really the policies and procedures of the city. So on the second page, we did have one item that we are required to bring to your attention. That's the preparation of the financial statements. So the accounting standards require that management of the city prepare the financial statements and all the related footnotes, which is this whole book. In reality, that never happens. Townships, cities, municipalities hire us to prepare these financial statements. And so we do provide drafts of the financial statements as well as all of the audit adjustments and the pension schedule, the release schedules to management of the city so that they can review and approve it. And that way we're still independent to issue an opinion on the financial statement.
I always find this to be an oxymoron that outsourcing to you have to identify as a deficiency.
I'm sorry. It's related to independence. So the standards don't allow us to audit our own work. So we have to be very careful that we're not making decisions for management. We can provide advice, but it's up to management to still review and approve everything. The second item here under budget amendments, this is just letting you know that we are required to, or the city is required to disclose any over budget items in the financial statements. Under qualitative aspects of accounting practice, letting you know that the city adopted that lease standard this year. As far as other policies, nothing was changed during the year. We found that everything was presented in the proper period. There wasn't issues, accounting standards where there wasn't criteria of how to account for those items.
Am I doing?
I think it's no. I think it's just.
When you go on, she goes off for some reason.
But I don't know why.
Not again. Accounting estimates, the net pension liability is a significant estimate as well as the useful lives of the fixed assets. So we did find that those were reasonable. Page 3, as far as significant disclosures, we mentioned the investment risk disclosures, the pension disclosures, and commitment and contingency disclosures. We had no difficulties encountered in performing the audit. On the bottom of the page, we go over some audit adjustments. I did box a portion there that's letting you know that those are adjustments to convert your modified accrual fund accounting to the full accrual basis of accounting for these government-wide financial statements. So the city does provide us with schedules of all of the fixed assets, all of the debt. And in the normal course of business, you would record capital outlay expense for fixed assets and record a debt expense. Those get recorded as either assets or liabilities in these government-wide financial statements. So that really, again, it's a matter of convenience. On the next page under uncorrected misstatements, it's really just past adjustments. The city did have a couple of copier leases that we found were immaterial, so we didn't apply that lease standard to them. They were too small, basically.
So is this a category of like inadvertent error? Is that what these are?
So there are adjustments that we identified that we decided were not, would not have a material effect on the users of the financial statements. So it's allowed to pass on them and still have a clean opinion.
And then I had one other on the page before. Can you speak to this recommendation regarding budget amendments more specifically, or? So you are required to disclose when you're over budget.
a lot of time, we recommend that you make budget amendments whenever you can, according to the State Budget Act. If you're over budget, that's a non-compliance. Basically, your total budget was still within budget. So it really was just department items. And a lot of times it relates to year-end accruals. So accounts payable, bills that come in after the end of the year. So you have to kind of predict what will come in and make sure you budget for it. And sometimes it's just not known.
Thank you.
Yes.
So from year to year, I always compare the documents from 2021 to 2022. And this year I did notice that there was a significant decrease in the budget amendments. I mean, like last year, we were at like $242,000 of budget amendments. And this year it's like 28.5.
Yep.
And the majority of it was a public works. I'm sure that had to do with some kind of road repair project or something like that, but that unprecedented in terms of like,
yes,
the budget amendments went down significantly. So, okay, well, we'll be prepared for next year and I'll have my spreadsheet side by side. Okay. Okay, thank you. I was totally impressed. And then
contracted services for fall or spring cleanup. So we wanted to make sure that the only thing going to recycling was recycling. So now the only thing going to that activity is just Stanley County bill, monthly bill. We put leaf trash pickup and everything.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I wasn't paying attention. So we put it all in spring cleanup category. And at the end of the year, I missed that 28,000. I should have done a budget amendment for an increase in expense of 28,000. And the $500 is just, I lucked out with that one, but then it says 400.
less than last time. Good job, right?
And then going back to page 4.
I'm sorry.
I keep hitting it with my documents maybe. So the city implemented the lease standard in fiscal year 2023 that you're in. There's another new standard for subscription-based technology arrangements, which is essentially leases for IT. So if you have any software where you're paying a recurring annual fee and you sign an upfront contract that says you're going to pay that amount over multiple years, next year in 2023, the city will also have to record that information directly on their financial statements. So it's a big calculation for not a lot of, benefit maybe. And then on page 5, that is letting you know that all of the additional information in the financial statements, the MD&A, budgetary comparison schedules, pension schedules, combining financial statements. We did perform procedures to that information and found that it was fairly presented as well. So any other questions that I can answer?
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
I'm terrified to touch this button. I just a general question. So as fiduciaries of city funds, are there any other items of particular import, positive or negative, to which you think our attention should be directed?
Usually the most important thing I encourage city commissioners to look at is the fund balance in your general fund. Make sure that that's adequate. So I always try to highlight that in the presentation. So you're at about 7.5 months. So we always recommend to try to not let it go below 3 months. And we do have cities who are below 3 months. So I think the commissioners have done a good job at adopting balanced budgets and making sure that you have adequate fund balance to cover cash flow times when the cash flow might be lower. So in between property tax collections, essentially.
Anything else?
No, I can't think of anything.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Mr. Shields.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Oaks, I just trying to just keep my head wrapped around the assets versus liabilities and thinking about our public infrastructure. And so do I have this imaginary scenario right? We have a $3 million street, it costs $3 million to put in. that street is now an asset. And then there's a depreciation amount that starts on year one, and that depreciation amount goes into the liabilities, is
It
that
goes into expenses.
goes to expenses?
So it comes out, it's originally in capital outlay expense. It's that way in your fund financial statements in the back. For the government wide, it gets set up as an asset and then depreciated over time. And so that accumulated depreciation is going to offset your asset value, and it flows through as an expense each year. So you add it back all in 1 year, and then it gets depreciated over the life.
Okay. And so thinking as communicating this to the public about a new street that will need to be repaired in 20, 25, 30 years, that is accounted for, in your opinion, in our financial health analysis, that future repair cost is accounted for? Or not?
I don't know if the repair cost is really accounted for, but that street will get depreciated over its useful life. So as your net capital asset balance goes down, that's indicating that your assets are getting older and might need to be replaced.
But they're not built into it, are they?
No.
No,
The future budgets, no.
So just something that
Not
we have to keep in
depreciation
mind,
expense.
and being transparent about our fiscal health is that we have these responsibilities to repair $3 million street eventually.
Yes, yeah. The city does keep depreciation records, so the age of, when those last street improvements were made.
Thank you.
Ms. Walker,
Can I ask, what would happen if you accounted for the depreciation in your budget? Would it skew the numbers? So much so that would just like make you feel like you weren't as financially secure? I mean, I know you keep a schedule of depreciation over here, but like you don't deduct it from the budget.
It is, so it's a non-cash item. So that's where it gets confusing. It's depreciation is not cash going out the door. The cash goes out the door all up front.
is there things we do that for though, is like capital improvement,
Right.
and we cover them with capital improvements such as the fire truck, public graders, cars, etc.
So you're paying into that. So when it comes time to replace that kind of asset, that's where you are deducting from the budget to provide like eventual replacement. But it's different with roads and streets.
It is.
Got it. That's a really good question. Thank you.
Wrap my head around. Thank you.
And the streets to the 5-year capital improvement plan that we have, where you'll see 4 years from now, we're going to be doing Curtis Avenue, or right now this year it's Bridge Street. Those were in the budget or on the proposed needed 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when Mike completes his schedule of where we're at.
Yeah, agree. Yeah, the goal of being transparent to our constituents. That's why we are collecting taxes, because we have those long-term obligations may not be reflected exactly.
Not in the depreciation, but it is in the capital improvement plan that we have set up.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions for the lady? I want to say thank you very much for
You're welcome.
every year you get better at this.
I know, I'm trying.
No, you think what better is it becomes shorter.
It all depends on the questions. So yeah, we thank the finance department, all the staff for making the audit go well. It's really their financial statements, so.
and thank you very much for all of your help.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Audrey, because you
And Bridget Lemire helped.
pulled the numbers together for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Let's keep moving. You can stay or go. Traverse City. Where? Oh, geez. You can stay a while.
Yeah, she got married and lives in Charlevoix now, so she works part-time at home and part-time in Traverse City.
That's nice. Yeah,
They do.
yeah. Okay, here we are. Consent agenda, adoption of proposed resolution to confirm approval of the following. the May 1st, 2023 regular session city council meeting minutes. As well as acknowledge the receipt of certain, report of certain administrative transactions since May 1st, 2023. And we must have some questions, I'm sure. Tina?
I have just a couple questions on the check register.
Page.
One is on page 16. It's about a quarter of a way down the page. It's drawn to Pro Image Design. It's under the category of capital outlay. And I know it's from the Downtown Management Parking Fund because I looked it up on the list that Mr. Horn provided to us. So I wonder if you might speak to that one, and then I'll give the second one.
Yes, that expenditure is parking. We're updating all of our parking city lot signs, parking signs. So from a consistency standpoint, we all have the same, they all have the same vintage, they all have consistency. So this was something that DMB highlighted as a need. So this expenditure will address all of our city parking lot signs. So we're all getting a consistent sign that looks the same, and we don't have different variations in different time periods that signs were replaced. So they'll be all done at the same time.
And the other.
The other one is on the next page, page 17, approximately 1/3 of the way down. It's Fishbeck, Thompson, Carr, and Huber. And it's an account number that must be a new one because it wasn't on our new list, but for rental rehab in the amount of $1,031.55. If you could speak to that, please.
As part of the City Park Grill Rental Rehab Project, as you know, the city will be the kind of the fiduciary for this project. So we had to create a special line item. We had to create a special, essentially a checking account to track expenses. So we'll get invoices throughout this project. We will submit those invoices onto the state for reimbursement, but we had to track these expenses separate from our city accounts. So you'll see this going forward as we reimburse expenses for this project under the rental rehab line item. So this was the Fishbeck, Thompson, Carr, and Huber. They are a consultant that was engaged or is engaged with us and the owners to do environmental assessment for that project as a requirement for CDBG. So that's a reimbursement for their expenses. And so we will then turn that into the state and hopefully get reimbursed quickly. So we don't have that cash. Well, this is obviously a pretty small amount, but they have a portal that we can correspond with them, submit invoices, and the turnaround is fairly quickly with that.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, council? Otherwise, I'd look for a motion. Mr. Wagner.
I'll motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion from Mr. Wagner, a second from Mr. Shield. Any other discussions? There being none, I will turn it over to Steve. Clerk Beck.
Wagner.
Yes.
Shields. Demore. Aye. Walker. Yes. Murphy.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Next public comment. Is there anybody out there? Is there anybody out there?
Microphone.
Is there anybody out there? There being none, we'll move on from that. Now we move on to city manager's updates.
Al Green over here.
I'm tired.
Okay, so a few things to highlight this week. Yeah, I can't either. That's okay. This is a busy week for meetings tonight, obviously. The next two nights, Downtown Management Board tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, their normal time. Not a lot on their agenda. Keeping you up.
It's all like stickers.
They will be reviewing, applications. They did an RFP for, if you recall, last year, they started a pop-up event and sought proposals for that. They did the same thing this year, and they'll be reviewing applicants for a pop-up event to occur. If you remember last year, it was hosted by Beards. And so they'll be reviewing that tomorrow night at their regular meeting. Planning Commission the following night on Wednesday at 6 p.m. We will be having the public hearing. They did review this last meeting, a rezoning request from R2 to I1. This is adjacent to 1624 Clarion Avenue to match the neighboring parcels zoning. And then also the Lofts project, as you know, you're echoing, but we'll be reviewing an amended site plan for the Lofts project. I have looked at this. I think the architect and the developer, I think, did a nice job of taking in the feedback that they received a few meetings back, and hopefully this will get good consideration from Planning Commission on Wednesday. And they'll also be reviewing a short-term rental ordinance language for continual discussion on that topic as well. A few pictures to highlight. Saturday, we had our Arbor Day celebration at Winter Sports Park. Certainly thank the League of Women Voters for taking on this project. The mayor was in attendance, as well as we had a demonstration from an arborist on tree management and pruning techniques, if you will, during that event.
City Council member Walker also showed up with her mother and.
Deep. I want it.
Nice. Great. Yeah, that's great. Outstanding. So I did pass this on to council. We were really thrilled to, it was a kind of a day late. It actually ran into Saturday. Ran into a little bit of old electrical wiring that needed to be upgraded. So that caused a little bit of a delay, but one other thing that we're working through, I believe I was told that this chimes on the half hour as well. It used to anyway. Now it's only chiming on the hour. So we'll have to see what that's about and dive into that a little bit, or maybe that's fine. I don't know. Maybe it'll be just completely fine, but so we're excited to have that project completed. Also pleased to announce that we obviously met the deadline, applied for the renewal of the Michigan Green Communities Challenge, and we are pleased to announce that we maintained our gold status once again. So that's exciting news that we will celebrate and push out on our social media platforms. We just got that announcement. Go ahead, Sarah. And then today, as the mayor mentioned, exciting news with another large check presentation, $150,000 from the Great Lakes Sports Commission for the Winter Sports Park Pavilion project. So we're thrilled to announce that and partner with the Great Lakes Sports Commission. Certainly appreciate Senator DeMoose taking time out of his schedule and for his efforts to get this funding for us, to realize this funding today. So he played an integral role in helping us achieve this donation. So we certainly thank him for that. I think that's, and just a couple pictures, if you can tell what this is. This is our gas tank installation at the marina. It's still a little in construction phase, a little messy phase, but we'll be building the wall to kind of give it some stability around it this week. And we're told by probably by the middle or end of next week, we'll have the ability to fill the tank and supply fuel to any boats that need it. So that was always our goal, to make sure that we have this in place and ready before the holiday. So we'll be able to meet that deadline and be able to have that resource available. So we're excited about that as well. Any questions for me?
What's cool about those tanks
Oh,
is
sure.
we not only have gasoline, but we don't have diesel.
Yeah.
Big time, double the amount of diesel and gasoline because they're such a request. So people aren't having to go to Harbor Springs or I don't know where to get it.
Yeah. And at some point, hopefully we'll be, I know Mike might slap me for saying this, but maybe to have electric options as boats become more green as well.
So I
So,
guess you gotta tell them that. They also, the landing for taking and getting your boat in the water is now available.
yes, thank you.
And I think I received 3 calls on that of why can't I get my boat in the water? And that was a snow day, and I called the guy and he said, you really want to go out on a snow day? And he said,
Yeah.
well, maybe tomorrow.
Yeah. Sorry, one more final thing. We're doing our starting our rubbish collection. It'll be I can't read that, but is it next week?
23rd and 24th.
Thank you.
And 30th.
Yep, May 23rd and the 24th, yep, and the 30th and 31st. So those 2 weeks, we'll be doing our rubbish collection program. Certainly encourage folks to look at our website for items that are permitted for collection and items that are excluded from collection, and certainly want to promote recycling efforts that Emmett County does such a great job providing that opportunity for us. So if items can be recycled, we certainly encourage folks to take advantage of that opportunity. So hopefully, again, people take advantage of getting their properties cleaned up. This is a great time of year to get out in the yard and maybe address some of the things that have been accumulating or piling up over the winter season. And let's get our yards and our exteriors looking nice for the rest of the summer. So we certainly encourage folks to take advantage of this opportunity.
Mr. Moore.
Just a quick question, sort of on topic, sort of off, but point of clarification on the code enforcement officer. And I know you provided us with a job description, but just as a refresher, part of his role will be looking at short-term rentals, making sure that they're properly licensed, et cetera.
Yeah, he'll be working with our current inspectors as well, Eric and Carl, to make sure that those inspections are completed. But yes.
But additionally, like following up on places that are operating that are not operating legally. et
Oh,
cetera.
yes. Thank you. Yeah.
We actually have a software now that searches the internet.
Don't tell everybody. They're secret.
Big brothers looking.
No, I know.
There it is.
Oh, boy, I blew it out. Get out of the bag.
Mr. Horn, with the short-term rental ordinance that's going through the planning commission, I know I've received some questions, I think other council members have as well. Is there any date set for that coming to council? Or is that just still in the planning commission? Stages right now?
It's still in there, on their agenda. We'll see what type of progress they make Thursday. Obviously, their packet is out. I can certainly break that off and send it on to you if you haven't seen it.
Let's go.
It sounds
What's short planning commission on Thursday?
What did I say? Thursday? Oh, sorry, Wednesday. But yeah, I can send it on to you for review, get a head start on it, or you can look at it on the pack.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily asking that, just this, if there's coming up, if there's something on the, you're looking forward to in the next couple of meetings,
Yeah, I would imagine it would be, we would have that on our plate. The handoff would happen here soon.
Mr. Moore.
Just following up on Derek's comments, I'm wondering if it wouldn't be valuable to have some sort of collaborative process on this rather than the planning commission, putting all this effort into it and then sending it to us, and we may agree or disagree with what they've done. I don't know if there might be some kind of joint meeting where we could have dialogue so that it was all input was considered rather than just having something come to us that we may have concerns about. Just trying to be as productive as possible.
Mr. Shields.
I was turning my mic off, but I mean, this is a kind of a recurring question on process on these more nuanced or this divisive issue, potential divisive issue. So I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. I'm not necessarily recommending that, but I don't know if Mr. Horn, if you have thoughts on that.
I think right now
you see their questions or not.
they're quite a ways down the road. And they will be obviously after Wednesday. We'll kind of see where that's at. I would think it would be in pretty good shape after Wednesday. So we'll have a pretty good idea where that's at. So. Listen. Hear that?
In the hour.
We cheered Saturday.
Did you?
And the clock is right here.
Yes.
But is it right with our son?
What was wrong with it?
I have a
This is
question.
always a couple minutes off. It's odd. Yes.
I think it's really interesting that Tina mentioned that because that has been something that we have discussed on council for a long time. For the first few years, I was chomping at the bit for some policy. And I was like, where's the policy going to come to city council? Like, when can we start delving into this stuff? And it's always been that back and forth and allowing the process of planning commission to go through their very rigorous and very sometimes drawn out process of evaluating policy. And then it comes to us is it are we rubber stamping this? Or is then if we have real feedback, then it has to go back and that. I've always wondered if we could somehow shorten or mitigate or be collaborative in that process. So I thank you for bringing that up because it's always been something that's pulled on my heartstrings.
Yeah, and my thinking was not so much to expedite, which would be awesome, but was more that I'm all about communication, and with all the voices in the room, I think it provides a better opportunity to provide a product that everybody can have consensus around.
Yeah.
And that this dynamic where they work on their own and then it comes to us and we may, nitpick or say we don't like, I could see where that would be frustrating, maybe not, but so the main thinking was just to enhance communication.
And our legal counsel has given us input on that. They're like, you have absolutely every right to be able to create your own policy and move forward on policy direction. So we have discussed that. And I'm really happy to know that we are finally getting a piece of policy that we can rigorously review together as a city council and then produce a product for the public around policy. So it feels like that, at least we're having the opportunity to deal with the economic development policy, because honestly, this is my third term serving and I haven't been through the process of actually developing policy yet. So.
And I apologize to the extent I made them more confusing for you today.
It's okay. Stay the course.
But again, point of clarification, are they sending us a policy or an ordinance?
It's an ordinance.
The ordinances and
Yeah.
policies.
Yeah.
Moving on to new business, adoption of proposed resolution that would establish property tax and millage rates.
John, remember the amendment?
Oh, the amended, my goodness.
I think it's under. I gave you a packet.
Next is the appointment recommendation. I'm asking, bringing forward to you the appointment to the zoning board of appeals.
No wrong.
William Brown, 619 East Lake Street. There's a vacancy due to Matt McSweeney moving on to the planning commission. I ask that you consider Mr. Brown. He is an attorney, has lived in Petoskey, raised kids here, And I bring his name forward.
So moved. Mr. Brown will make a fine contribution to the zoning board of appeals.
Do I have a second? I have a motion from Ms. Demore and a second from Mr. Wagner. Any other discussion? There being none, I go to clerk back to roll.
Demore,
Aye.
Wagner,
Yes.
Shields,
Yes.
Walker. Yes. Murphy.
Yes, we now have a full ZBA board, and I know there are a couple of things coming up in front of them, and I think it's good to have a good variety there, people. Now, new business, adoption of proposed resolution that would establish property tax millage rates for 2023. And it would authorize appropriations of property tax revenues to various city funds as previously has been approved as a part of the city's 2023 annual budget. I turn it over to our city manager, Jane Horn.
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, when we put the budget together, we're making some of our best case estimates as we put assessments together, what we think we're going to realize from a property tax standpoint. We have real data now that we can utilize and facilitate our budget. So I'm gonna have Audrey kind of speak to this resolution a little more specifically as she's put this item on the agenda this evening.
Audrey?
All right.
Hey, there we go.
There we go. So taxable values for 2020 increased 2022 to 3. So for this budget, there was an increase of 7.9%, I think, 7.9%. The state only allows you, because of the Headley Amendment, to recognize 5%. So we're capped at 5%. But being this is the first time since I think I wrote down or looked up 1994, since this is the first time we will not have to roll back the taxes. So the millage will be exactly the same as last year. So I adjusted the revenues, the captures in the Act 24, the Bay Harbor Act 24 numbers to come out with the revenues now for the budget. And that would be it. Yeah, since 2000, it was, in 2005, I looked up the last year that the millage rate was higher for the solid waste, the millage rate of the 0.4890. I'm not sure why that amount is always used. It's not the maximum rate we can use, but we've been using that since 2005. And I think it's because the reserves in that solid waste fund are sitting at $380,000. So there's no need for excess taxation there. And then taxable increases. The projected for the budget was set at 6%. We get a bulletin from the state allowing us to kind of budget for that. So originally it was at 6%. And we had losses of 2.9 million in taxable value, in additions of 7 million in taxable value. So the net of that is very, very good. Yeah, so it'll be increased from what was budgeted or anticipated. It'll be overall an increase of 42,000 in revenues.
Any questions, council?
I don't have a question, but I did want to share something with all of you. I got a constituent call and it piqued my interest, because when I looked at this, I thought, well, this is great. Millage rates are remaining the same, which is a good thing. But the constituent was talking about the fact of the prices of houses that are selling now in Petoskey and the impediment that presents to young people coming into town or trying to buy a home and that sort of thing. And really the idea was just, has council ever brainstormed about ways we could help with this. And I don't know the answer, but I thought it was a really interesting question because with local properties selling it, over $1 million, it really does present a barrier to our goal to have young people return and to enhance workforce housing and that sort of thing. So I don't know what thinking outside the box there might be, but more heads are
Did
better.
the individual that called you have a suggestion?
The individual that called me, the inquiry was, it began with, is there something we can do to, for example, do a higher tax rate with people who live here part-time, as an example, because those are often folks that are buying, not always, but sometimes expensive homes. They're only here part-time, and then having a rate that's less for people that live here full-time. Well, obviously that already happens because there's non-homestead exemption, which the individual was aware of. So they were really talking about brainstorming beyond that, and not just in the context of part-time versus full-time, but also in the context of trying to make housing more accessible for people that aren't extremely wealthy. So I just thought it was interesting and worth putting out there for thinking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on our proposal? Wagner?
I will make a motion to approve the resolution.
Thank you.
Support.
I have a motion from Ms. Wagner, Mr. Wagner, and from Mr. Moore. Any other discussion? I go to city clerk, Beth for roll.
Wagner,
Yes.
Demore,
Aye.
Shields,
Yes.
Walker. Yes. Murphy.
Yes, motion passes unanimous with 5-0. Next, is discussion on possible adoption.
Thank you for all your efforts on this.
Yes.
Oh,
Very much
you're welcome.
appreciated.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Discussion on possible adoption of the proposed resolution that would change city council meeting start time from 7 p.m. to 6 p.m. Is there anyone wish to make a discussion on that? More?
Yeah, as I indicated to the mayor, I do an email outreach. I don't have a lot of people on it, but I have a significant number. And the feedback that I got from folks that did give me feedback were that they prefer the starting time at 7 o'clock. And what they gave me was just, it gives them time to get home, feed the kids, have dinner. So with due respect to the staff, I certainly appreciate their desire or my understanding of their desire for earlier time. But for me and my constituents, it's not something I could support. Thank you.
I feel that we are doing video. We video so you can sit at home and you can watch it, participate, active participation. But a few times that somebody would want to come to a meeting, I would believe that there's a way around it with your family trying to work out meals, a meal. Do I have anybody that would entertain a motion? Mr. Wagner?
Well, a comment first, which is I support the staff, and the other commission meetings are working at 6 o'clock. And I've said before, I've got the most flexible schedule probably of anybody on council. But for the sake of staff getting out earlier, not having to have an extra hour committed to the meetings, I said I'm in favor of making the change. So I'll motion to approve unless there's more comment.
Motion from Mr. Wagner, is there any second?
I'll second the motion. And I have a question.
A motion from first for Mr. Wagner and a second for Mr. Shield. Discussion.
How would it work with our what we did is our work session? That's the word I was looking for.
We could just condense our work session. We could go from, I know 5 o'clock is difficult, maybe 5:15 to 6 o'clock or 5:30 to 6 o'clock, and just make sure that we condense our work sessions to that time frame. Or we have
Second meeting.
yeah, we have a meeting separate from the regular meeting. Like we meet the first and third Mondays. Maybe you take another one there, whether it's the second or the fourth. And I know that's another evening, but or Saturday morning every now and then.
Any other discussion, council? I turn it over to city clerk Beck for roll.
Wagner,
Yes.
Shields,
Yes.
Lamore. Nay. Walker. No. Murphy.
Yes,
So.
motion passes 3-2. Let's try it. We can always vote and change it back if it's not working. Next, I go with city council comments. I start with Mr. Moore.
I only wanted to recognize and thank Kendall for thinking outside of the box, grant writing, persistence. And there were a whole group of folks there today at the presentation of the $150,000. Nikki Devitt from the Chamber, representatives of Friends of Winter Sports Park, Great Lakes Sports Commission, Rotary Community Foundation, and a local family foundation, along with Senator DeMoose in support of that all-season pavilion project. So it was pretty awesome, and thanks all around to all those partnerships. That's it. Thank you.
Mr. Shields,
No comments. Thanks, Mayor.
Mr. Wagner.
Thank you. I read something on my phone, but I figured I'd write it down and read it. It said Tyler Woods on 106 KHQ. He believed that, spoke with somebody, a city rep, believed the piano might be short-lived in its current stormwater drain, but he didn't indicate it would be removed anytime soon. The city is well aware of the outpouring of support for the piano, and the rep said, maybe this is grease the wheels for the city to take an idea like this to and do it in the right way. We haven't discussed this, and it's obviously, it's not policy, it's not anything for planning commission. My kind of tough love thing is that somebody dumped a piece of private property on city, on the city and left it. I jokingly had a conversation with a couple of pastors in town who have 3 upright pianos they don't know what to do with. There's a couple of, so with that said, I feel it had to have put Shane between a rock and a hard place, because the outpouring of happiness and joy and love has been incredible. So I just want to commend Shane in that position to position us, I think, in a good way for the city. And I noticed that flags at half mast today. It's Peace Officers Memorial Day. And so unfortunately, nobody's here from our peace officers, but I want to recognize them.
Ms. Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. No comments.
My comments are, I would like to let you know that as far as what was called the Mayor's Youth Council, what we're looking at is the City Petoskey Youth Council. I've asked Ms. DeMoore to lead the charge on that. She will be starting out sooner than later to make sure, so in the fall, they have the kids out ready to go in the fall. So thank you, Tina, for taking the lead on that. We're looking excited. I'm excited about it. I would gladly show up the first time and say thank you for attending and etc. But Tina, thank you for your leadership on that. I know you've wanted to do this for a long time.
I have, but I want to indicate on the record that I will be outsourcing to each of you in your area of expertise, I hope, to help with this endeavor. So the students get the full experience of everything everybody brings to this table. So
Thank you for that. The other thing is I attended a college graduation, the commencement. It was unbelievable. It was well worth my time. I was kicking myself thinking, I don't want to spend a Friday night at college inside. It was so well worth it. It was what an honor to be able to go there and watch these people and the families that are local people that had individuals that weren't gonna probably go to 4 years of college, but they've got so many tech prep programs there, and that was just great.
Debbie's having us.
Yes, she was. So was, and, yes, they were all there. Lastly, I had one other thing. Looking at what else I attended. I guess there being no further business